Gentlemen, lady, welcome to another episode of Rennch. On today's show, we're going to talk about packaging. And not my package. That'd be too long of a show. Yow! Let's go. I'm also going to probably catastrophize welding up a aluminum intake for the Subaru-Swapped Porsche. So stick around for that fun and excitement. Packaging. Who knew that when I started this channel, literally almost 10 years ago, sadly, that packaging was going to be a primary concern of mine in 2025. And what is packaging? Well, it's the placement and orientation of all the different parts you need when you're doing, in this case, an engine swap from a Subaru EZ30 flat 6 into a vintage Porsche, and where you got to put all the parts and where things are going to exist. In my case, because I'm selling this package as a kit, I need to make sure that the packaging is super dialed. It's got to look great. I come from an era of, entrepreneurial BMX guys that made really cool parts when they were 20. So that's still burned into my brain. So not only does it have to look good, but it has to obviously function well. And it's got to kind of, in my case, because I'm selling this to people, it has to be as modular as humanly possible. Meaning, it's got to be able to translate from 1964 until 1989 in terms of a Porsche 911 or 912. So I've got a million things to consider when I think about how this engine's going to fit in the engine compartment. In the last episode, I welded together the laser cut cradle that came from Send Cut Send. So the next item up for bid is this radiator. This thing comes from a company called PLM, or Private Label Manufacturer. This is one of their off-the-shelf like Honda radiators, but my hope is that I'll be able to work with them to make the fully customized version of this. So this is really proof of concept. This thing is going to mount basically right under the deck lid on the Porsche. So basically where that deck lid grill is right where these fans need to be, sucking in all that fresh air as you're driving. So that was the first order of business, which was how do we mount this thing in a way that it's going to be effective and actually suck in all of this fresh air? That was my first concern. My second concern is, where do we put all this stuff? This is a flex fuel sensor from Haltech. This is a fuel regulator. This is my wideband sensor. All of this stuff needs to go somewhere, and to me, a lot of it really convolutes the engine compartment. So my next order of business, because I want this thing to look great and be modular, is that these things need to go somewhere. This actually needs to be a spot. So let me show you what I decided to do for both of those things and the design and prototype process that I've been following before we jump into this air intake discussion. My design parameters for this radiator were, first and foremost, it has to be located obviously right under the grill. I need all that fresh air. Second thing was I wanted to have a little bit of rotational flex in the design, just so if I needed to angle it a certain way or give myself a little more clearance, and for whatever reason, I could do that. So I started, and this is, if anybody ever wonders, why do these things take so long? Well, because here's a pile of prototypes until I got what I needed. So just for you guys who are sort of garage inventors as well, let me put all the 3D prints down. This is the first thing I did, which is just a couple of chunks of aluminum, and everything's hand cut. I got it where I needed it. Another design parameter was that I needed to use existing bolt holes. I wanted to use things that the factory already had, so I didn't have to worry about it too much. These are my two original aluminum pieces, and I just basically welded like a little 90-degree corner with my super awesome aluminum welding that you're gonna see later in this episode. And I got those located first. The important part here is that now I had slots. I knew exactly where the slot needed to be, and I had the mounting holes that I wanted. And it's so funny, I look back at this now, in how I ended up designing this stuff. And this was this wasn't that long ago, and I'm so much better now than I was. As you can see, this is basically what I started with. And then if you flip it over, you can see all the markings of where I started thinking, all right, so I don't need any of this other material. I can start getting rid of material. And here's funny, here's my Rennch logo, which I've seen better versions of my Rennch logo. Anyway, so here's where we started. And then I got these things kind of mocked up with the right hole in CAD, you know, in Fusion 360. And what you see here is the result of a million different iterations of how this thing could look when done originally in aluminum. That was my plan, is to do this in aluminum. So I made the first pass. I knew I needed to make some adjustments, made a few tweaks in CAD, and I'll tell you, a huge amount of challenge for me is my learning curve of Fusion 360. So if you guys have ever opened up a brand new piece of software, I'm a pretty software savvy dude. I was a designer for 25 years. I know Photoshop and Illustrator like the back of my hand, but 3D software is just a whole different animal. And even now I look back a month ago and I think about how much better I am at Fusion than I was prior to this entire process. So anyway, what you guys see here is prototype after prototype after prototype, and I ended with these two guys, which are actually carbon fiber PLA. So these are carbon pieces, which are pretty cool. But what I discovered about carbon is that it's very brittle. It broke much easier than I expected it to. I call this the bubble vibe, just all these little bubbles. And I really liked it for a while, and then I sort of went away from it in reality. And let me show you kind of where I landed with this particular thing. So this is the most current mock-up, and these actually went to print. These things went to send, cut, send. Let me move this thing. These things went to send, cut, send, and this is where they ended up. And the reason why it matters is because I think I did a really cool job mocking all of this stuff up in 3D. So let's go have a look at that real quick. All right, guys, so what we have here is a scan basically of the intake. I knew I needed a nice scan of the intake so that I could properly locate the radiator on it. So first we've got the intake. It looks like that. And then I actually literally created the radiator from scratch. I did this myself. I rendered this radiator, and it's really an exact mock-up of the real radiator. So I was able to get some really good form and functionality, obviously from that intake scan. And then now I've got the radiator located where it's supposed to be. And now I've got to design the radiator supports. So that's what these guys are. This is a powder-coated version of these radiator supports, and they mount right to the intake here. It's kind of, this covers up the fuel rails, and it's got a nice little rubber bumper that I also created from scratch. I even put the nuts and bolts on, which I'm very proud of my rendering here. I was able to figure out how to use like McMaster car. And if you guys see these two bolt holes, this is the next solution to the kit. If you remember, I've got the flex fuel sensor, I've got the fuel regulator, and I've got the wideband. And so what I did is I decided to create a back panel that fits on this. And so all of that stuff is gonna mount right there, backwards. It's going to mount on the back side of this. And I think if you look closely, you can even see I've got this sweet logo in the middle of it. In fact, I can just do this. Boom. So that's what that looks like, all in situ. So all of this stuff now has gone to send, cut, send, and I'm literally waiting for my order to be processed and shipped. I think it looks really cool. I'm super excited about how that came about. So that was the first part of this packaging. Is let me solve the radiator. I've got all the correct clearances that I need, and it all works the way it's supposed to right now. So that leaves us in the next phase of this packaging conversation, which is I need an air intake here. And you can see that it needs to come out of the back of the motor right there. The idea I had, which I thought would be really cool, is for this swap, I've removed the original Porsche oil tank that would go here. So there's a whole lip that goes right in this area. But this is a really good spot to run a cone air filter. And if I can show you, so what I've done here is I happen to have like a bunch of 2.5-inch aluminum like for an intercooler setup. I already have like a whole box of this stuff. So imagine that I've got like a U that comes out of here and it curves around my shock. I've got to leave a little bit of room for the, this is where the radiator is, and then the hose has to go down between here. Again, packaging, packaging, packaging. And then this thing has a lovely spot for an air intake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a scan of this hole, which is why all the tape and all the markers are here. We're going to do that right now. And I'm going to create a sandwich plate here, 3D print the 3-inch hole in it right here. So the tubing is going to run there, it's going to wrap around, it's going to 90 degree to this hole, and it's going to be a super clean looking setup that I will show you right now on the computator. All right, so this is what I have in mind. Here's my air intake and the filter. So that's basically how this is going to go. You can imagine the edge of the engine compartments about right there, or actually about right there. So this will poke through into that rear wheel well area and stay, hopefully, full of really good, cool, fresh air. So what I need to do now is do a scan on the body of this little interface that's going to go really between the body and feed this 3-inch tube through. And then when we are done with that, I have all of the actual parts here that I need to build it. I've never tried to TIG weld up a air intake before, so we will be doing this adventure together as usual. So what you just saw there was literally about 30 hours of CAD, and I'm not a CAD guy, but what I will say is that I'm going to do a little 3D scanning right now. If you are like me in any way possible, and you can get your hands on a 3D scanner, get some light competency in Autodesk Fusion, you can create some incredible parts. So what we're going to do right now is, I've already got all the markers and the engine prepared for a 3D scan. I'm going to be using my Creality Raptor X. This is a blue laser scanner that you saw me unbox a few months ago. This thing, like everything else, has become invaluable to creating all of these really cool like OEM car parts. So I've got my lovely girlfriend filming right now, and what we're going to do is we're going to lower these lights a little bit, like a little quiet storm. And she's gonna get over here and we're gonna try to film it. And hopefully you see, it's not gonna take long. I've got so many markers on there right now. This laser doesn't lose its focus. And we should be able to do a really good, quick scan of this piece. So I've got a ton of markers on this thing. So basically I'm trying to get all of the rendering on the computer to be green. It kind of starts as orange when it's just kind of a beginner part of the scan. And then as you scan deeper and get more parts that are adjacent to the part you want, it kind of all turns green. And this one looks really good. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with that. So I hit stop. That took 60 seconds. All right, so now if I just hit stop, it says complete scan. And now I have this rendering. And there's a lot of stuff I don't need. I don't need any of this stuff here. So I can actually chop all that stuff off in the software. And all I really need is this hole that I will bring into Fusion and be able to start creating something around. So they make it really easy to clean up any of these weird artifacts you get from scans. There's just a little lasso tool here. And you can see the way you orient it, if I just move the orientation this way, so we know that I want this part, but any of this stuff I don't need at all. So I've got the lasso selected. You just have to hit shift and you can literally just do this and delete it. And that's it. So now we're good to go. I can process this. They call it one-click processing. It's not a very big scan. And this is what I can bring right into Fusion to create my sandwich plate. So let's do that next. Okay, so here's this little plate I just whipped up, and basically this rides against the body and then has a little pass through here so that it kind of locates in the circle. And what I'll do is I'll create another flange on this side where I can basically screw it in and sandwich the two pieces of the body together. And that should allow me to have this lovely 3-inch hole to pass the tubing through. This will be kind of prototype number one, as what I'm not sure about is if I can get, what I'm going to need to do is actually curve through here and down. And I'm not sure if that will give me enough room. I may need to like round the edges off or give myself a little bit more clearance. But otherwise, I'm going to get this printing, and then we can actually get to really truly assembling the air intake and maybe tacking it all together. All right, I'm going to get this thing printing while we move on to other things. Minimize print time. This is just going to be a quick. Okay, so what does that do? Does it go sideways? Oh, interesting. So that diagonal is the minimizing print time. Cool. All right, so all we're going to do here is change this to black, because once you go, you never go. And how long is this going to take? 2 hours, 40 minutes. You can see the green is all the support that it needs to stay up, which is fine. And this should be okay. All I'm doing here is just like double checking the size, make sure that I don't have any interference. And if I do, I can basically mark it on here and then just tweak it in the drawing and resend, and we should be good to go. All right, dudes, here we are. So I've thrown the radiator in the car just so I have a sense of actual spacing versus the virtual world. And if you can see back there, I have tacked together, this wasn't quite long enough, so I just tacked this kind of little extension on that goes to like right here. I just had a little short piece. So that's good to go there. We've got a nice curve that comes around here. And my 3D print is like 3 minutes away from being finished. And that is helpful because it will help me locate the center point of this tube, which is going to go right through there the way it's supposed to. And I should be able to kind of set the print here and then run this bad boy through it. Now, the challenge I'm having right now is that the filter I bought, this guy, which is a cheapie, it's like 15, 16 bucks on Amazon. I can definitely use it in other opportunities. I mean, certainly if I really wanted to, I could have just thrown it back there and then it would have just been there. But I feel like that's going to be all hot air back there. The problem is this bad boy is a little bit too tall, like it's too tall this way to fit into the spot I need. So I think I'm actually just going to order a shorter one from Amazon. My options were this. I either curve it, and then curve it down, and I can fit this guy, or I'm able to get it to stick out this way, like with a straight shot. And so I think I'm really going to do that. It feels like that's a better move for me, just to go with a slightly shorter version of this. So that's what I'm going to do. But it doesn't preclude me from getting this thing located and then being able to get these two pipes to be oriented correctly, tack them up, and then maybe weld both of those guys together, and we should be good to go for the air intake. Let's go check on the 3D print. Oh, look at that. Literally exactly in time for my print to be done. I think. What's it say? Print complete. Okay, let's grab this bad boy. What happens is if you just kind of crank this, all of this like support material here that you can break off, very satisfying. And I've got this really cool little print. So here's my interface. So that's it. We're gonna serve this up to the car and see how it fits. Yeah, let's check the fit of the tube first. Oh, okay, well that's awesome. That's like literally zero play. That's why we measure things with calipers. Kind of marry up. Come on, baby. Settle in. Go to your house. Go to your house. All right, I've got the plate in, and I've got the pipes positioned close to where they are. You can see that I've made a couple of marks on the pipe, and that is for the orientation that I need. So I'm going to tack this together and see where we're at. Let's get two more. This tack broke, so I got a little more space here than I wanted. I'm gonna have to redo it real quick. Okay. This is the hard part, getting all the fit together the way you want it to. There it is. Pretty awesome. Yeah, awesome. Now I got to fully weld it. Thankfully I've made it in only 2 seams. So let's give it a go and see how we do. Well guys, this is now 1 piece. It once was 3. And I gotta say, if you guys see here, there's like, it almost looks like I figured something out. I was getting there on this one. Today on this one, it wasn't as good. It turns out welding something that's like rotating in all kinds of weird ways is not easy. However, this is really a pretty successful first time out for me. So I'm gonna throw it in now, and I'm assuming it's going to go well. Couple things I've thought about since I started this is, one, there's kind of an air breather that's on the right-hand side of the engine that I could route through the same 3D print. I've also done a couple of tweaks to the 3D print, and I need to install bolt holes and get the other side of the sandwich plate dialed. But I can certainly get this thing in. I'll let the 3D printer print out the other parts I need for the next few hours today. But I want to show you guys one more thing before we wrap up this video. There it is, guys. That's awesome. That's awesome. Not gonna lie, that looks really super cool. And I think it's gonna be really effective as well. So when I get the actual 3D print done, I'll put a little foam on this lip and completely seal it. And I think it's just gonna be perfect. It looks like it fits beautifully. It looks super cool in there, doesn't it? I'm pretty stoked about how that turned out. And it's pretty rad that it went from 3D rendering to reality. Just like that. So the last thing I want to show you is the process I used for these guys. So you see these little dudes here? These basically go here where the factory, there's like a bumper bracket that comes up through this hole, and this fits around the bracket, or in this case, I've got a bolt that goes right through the chassis rail here, and This thing basically bolts to the engine cradle and helps the cradle locate. It also helps stabilize the cradle, but these are like full on, let me see what I have in the shop and bend them and make them work. So I needed like a really good version of these. The biggest thing I was concerned about is this gap right here. Like, this thing's holding an engine which weighs hundreds of pounds, and I didn't want any kind of play and wiggle room. So what I wanted to do is create a bracket that matched the contours of the Porsche. And the other big challenge is this. So you see how this thing is sticking up? This is like a few millimeters proud of the flat surface of this kind of rear frame rail. So I needed to make a piece that would allow me to make this thing level. Otherwise, it's sitting at this angle where it's kind of diagonally dropping. So break out the handy dandy Harbor Freight contour tool. And all I did is I got a contour of that particular spot. Took this contour then to a piece of cardboard. So this is the CAD, the cardboard aided design of the little bracket that I made that fits over the contour of the frame rail. And then this little guy is just the spacer that kind of goes around that factory weird washer that's on the top of the frame rail. And I just needed this little guy. So it's got some numbers on it of how I could dimension it in Fusion. And then this is the actual piece. I think you can see this from here. Let me zoom it. So one thing I'm getting a little better at is assemblies. So this is my little spacer. Really easy. Obviously it looks exactly like the piece that I designed. Then the next thing I wanted to do is, okay, now I need the actual bracket itself. And this is that hanger, and that goes over the top. So you can see that the washer kind of fits in this little area here, and it clears it. And then I have something, this nice flat surface for this to sit on between the washer here and then this little platform. The next thing I had to do is make those side supports. So the side supports look like this. And this is literally like an exact duplicate of this, as you can see. And then when it's all put together, they are like this. So this is the entire assembly. So basically, I will tack this small part on first and then weld all along the sides here. And I have this really great, strong bracket. And if these things aren't fully closed, but they're just sitting up against the side of the frame rail, that should be okay. I don't know, you guys tell me. But this is basically what the assembly looks like. I've decided to, on the bottom, in the original design, I had this sort of diagonally cut, but I realized if I just put a rounded bottom on it, then I can just get these things mass produced, and it doesn't matter if they're the right side or the left side. So that really works out well for me. So all these parts are coming from Send Cut Send right now. I'm hoping they're gonna arrive Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, so I have enough time, you know, maybe Thursday and Friday to get this thing assembled and try to get it to Subi Fest on Saturday. That's kind of the big goal right now. If I don't hit it, then at least I'm really, really close. And the most important part is that this represents 99.9% of the engineering that my swap kit needs, which means that at this point, I'm almost in production, which is just a huge, massive milestone. So, packaging. In this video, I've shown you multiple ways of getting parts finished for your project. First, we started with a 3D scan of this entire intake system so that I could create mounts for the radiator. Then we physically scanned the hole on the right side of my engine compartment and then made a 3D print that then designed around this really cool sandwich plate that then worked for the air intake. I had designed the air intake pretty much freehand in Fusion just to show how it could route with the rest of the assembly of the radiators and that kind of thing. And obviously the results speak for themselves. I think it looks amazing. And then finally, we used all analog stuff, cardboard aided design. Just used a tool to get a profile, literally traced the profile onto a piece of cardboard, cut the piece of cardboard, kind of looked at it, figured out the dimensions I needed, took those dimensions into Fusion and designed them and made the assembly, and then sent them to Send Cut Send so that they can make really perfect laser cut parts. So I've kind of done everything except do it fully analog, where I've just created the parts here, which to me feels a little bit yesteryear, if I'm being honest. If we can get brand new, beautiful laser cut parts, easier to weld, look better when they're done, it's not really a big deal to crank them out in Fusion. If you don't know a software like Fusion 360, don't worry. Either did I. I'll tell you, just really over the last, I would say 3 weeks, I had a very minor surgery and I was laid up. And so all I could do is just sit and tinker. And I did that entire assembly, and the stuff I learned during the process of doing that assembly has accelerated my Fusion skills by like 10x. So just give yourself some grace, trudge through it, make really simple parts if you can. Get yourself a 3D printer, holy moly. If you're a person like me that does these kinds of projects in the garage, having a 3D printer is so freaking awesome to prototype parts. And then when they're done and you've got them, okay, that looks like it's gonna fit physically, I have it in my hand, then you can send it to a company like Send Cut Send, and they laser cut it and you get this beautiful part back, whether it's powder coated or whatever. So that's it for today. When my parts come in from Send Cut Send, we're gonna do another video of assembling all this stuff, and cross my fingers, get all this stuff into the car, get it bolted in, and see if we can get the thing starting up and driving around Long Beach, for crying out loud. Until then, thank you for watching. You guys keep on rocking. We'll talk to you soon.